Here's a riddle for you. Why would a guy with a lifetime of success and 3 careers, who's also the owner of a thriving digital marketing firm, go to law school well into his AARP years? Well, the answer was a long time in coming, starting with Lucille. Long before I'd ever heard of an eloquent young black preacher from Atlanta who would become the face of the civil rights movement, Lucille would appear at our family's back door each morning in South Carolina as my father left for his job as dean of a local college. Lucille became our mother for the day. If any of the 3 King children needed help, from assistance buttoning a shirt to bandaging a skinned knee to reaching for a glass on an upper kitchen shelf, we cried out for Lucille, who was always there instantly to help. The best-selling novel and 2011 movie, The Help, unflinchingly depicted the apartheid South before the civil rights movement, when middle and upper class white families hired African American women as house servants for exploitative wages. For me, the film was a replay of my childhood in the early 1960s and of Lucille, an impoverished descendant of slaves and wife of a tenant farmer. My earliest memories include standing up in the back seat of the family station wagon as my father drove Lucille home early every evening, down unpaved roads and past wooden shanties that were home to our mill town's black residents. Lucille's employment with my family ended when I was 9 years old and my father took a university position 60 miles away. There my family joined a local Presbyterian church and my dad became a church deacon. Shortly after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, African American activists began testing new freedoms by appearing at the doors of all white churches throughout the South, asking to be seated for services. The deacons of our little church in the countryside called an emergency meeting. Each deacon was asked how he would react as a Sunday greeter. When my father's term came, he said simply, I would find seats for them. It wasn't long after that meeting that my father took an anonymous phone call at home. A male voice on the other end said that if my dad said anything like that again, our house would be burned to the ground. Flash forward many decades. One evening I'm listening to an interview on the car radio with the venerated Bryan Stevenson, founder of the Equal Justice Initiative and a civil rights attorney. I hear Mr. Stevenson relating how his organization has freed thousands of wrongly convicted felons, including accused murderers on death row, and has represented thousands more denied competent legal representation and fair trials. You may have heard of him from Just Mercy, the book and 2020 film of the same name. As I listened to his radio interview, my instant and strong response was, if I had to do it over again, that's the kind of work I'd do. Tragically, the opportunity to do that began forming just a few years later. In 2013, my wife and life partner of 19 years died suddenly of a rare and deadly form of stroke. She left me a little insurance money. I invested it in the stock market. A few years later, I had enough to pay law school tuition. I took the LSAT and began law school part-time. I now have a Juris Doctorate diploma, the 4th of my academic degrees. All around me, fellow baby boomers are gleefully packing up office belongings and venturing off into comfortable retirements of golf, travel, and visits with grandchildren. Why, I constantly ask myself, do I feel called in a very different direction? The answer is perhaps best expressed by New York Times columnist David Brooks in his book, The Second Mountain, in which he writes of successful professionals who leave a comfortable career in which they climbed a first mountain for something potentially more rewarding. I quote Mr. Brooks here. They realize this wasn't my mountain after all. There's another, bigger mountain out there that is actually my mountain. And so they embark on a new journey. On the second mountain, life moves from self-centered to other-centered. End quote. I am the great-great-grandson of a Georgia plantation owner and master of more than 400 slaves. I was born white, male, and heterosexual to educated middle-class parents. I've had nearly every imaginable advantage in life, and so I've begun scaling my second mountain. I plan for my ascent to be a transition ultimately to the practice of public interest law. In the meantime, a synchronicity of missions has arisen. With greater exposure to the practice of law has come an awareness of the vital importance of connecting the right client to the right attorney when that client is in most need of help.